Hello everybody, it's the 14th of August 2015. It's Dan here from Essex, United Kingdom. Doing a little bit of pruning of the golden gage today. So I'll just show you what we've got here. Now this is a golden gage. Now a golden gage is not a gage, it is in fact a plum. Quite often people will mix these two up. There's a wasp somewhere there, but these really are nice. They're my favourite plum. I prefer these over Victoria or Merryweather. Very sweet and juicy, and I do advocate people growing these if possible. Here you go, this is a nice one. This is sort of what a mature one, you know, they might go a little bit more yellow than this, but they're very nice. That's what they look like. And they're very juicy and sweet. So what I've done here is a little bit of pruning. Now you can see that I've taken quite a bit off. I'll show you what we've got here. Took that main leader off and this main leader off here. Now this may seem a bit harsh, but I'll show you one of the ones we took off. This is one of the leaders. It was putting a leader off, and then the majority of the branches off of it were proceeding to go bolt upright into the air, which is, you know, not really helpful for plum production. And even if it did produce plums, they were 20 feet up in the air and very difficult to pick. And of course, plums that are up in the air, you end up getting a lot of this sort of stuff because they're hard to see and hard to pick. So there you go, and we get a lot of wasps as well. So took it off quite harsh. Generally when you're pruning a plum tree, you want to be able to get something through the middle. Like if you threw a ball, you want it to go through the middle. So you certainly can with that. If you look at the tree from this angle, that's that side of it. And there's this side of it here. And this here. So I'm hoping that this is going to encourage it to put out some shoots from these points here, which will be able to get some hanging branches, which should then produce fruit. Because if you notice on most plum trees, they tend to produce the fruit on the lower hanging branches, which is what I want to try to get this to do. Now, when you're pruning a plum tree, you want to be pruning it ideally in June, after the fruit has set. It can be difficult to be cutting off branches with fruit on, but it's a necessary thing. You can do it in late August if you if you can't do it in June, but June is ideal. Don't ever prune a plum tree in winter like you would say an apple tree, because you could introduce silverleaf disease, and if you do that to your tree and you lose it, particularly if it's a tree like this 20 years old and it dies of silverleaf disease, you'll be quite disappointed, because a silverleaf disease can quite often be fatal for the tree. It's a bit like the plum tree version of peach leaf curl, and you all know what I think about that. But you can do formative pruning on like an espalier in the winter on the little branches, but when you're doing a big pruning job like this, don't ever do it in the winter. Do it in June, or failing that, do it in late August. Okay? And you also want to be taking off little bits of, look at the plum tree, these are still fruiting on here, but you don't want to let them get too tired. If any of these die, you want to take them off, because plums will fruit on old or new wood. But you don't want to let the shoots completely exhaust themselves. You want to encourage new green shoots. So you look at that, that's a new one. So look how healthy that looks, as opposed to that. I'm going to leave this, but maybe next year that will come off. So that's a little bit about pruning a plum tree. And you want to paint these with some sort of arbrex sort of stuff, or beeswax, to prevent anything getting in. You really don't want to disease a tree. I mean, this is about 25 years old, and if this tree went, it would be a big shame. You want to be opening it up as well. You want to open these up so that you know, they're not growing all close together, because of course a plum is a sugary, very sugary thing, and disease can breed in close, warm, wet, sugary environments, which you really don't want. So, I mean, this did have branches all the way out to here, but they're now gone, and they're very close together. And in fact, for the size of the tree, it produced very little fruit. So this is basically the way we're trying to rejuvenate this tree. Next year I will be uploading videos on how it's progressing. Now this here is an espalier damson. If you look up here, you can see the damson. That's the damson from next door, and it put up a sucker on our side, and we proceeded to espalier it up against this fence. So I've got a little bit of pruning to do here. As I said, you can do formative pruning on very small branches in the winter of a plum. A damson is a member of the plum family, by the way. You can do that in the winter, but only very small branches, not big ones, because you may introduce silverleaf disease. I can't stress the importance of that enough. So you can see we're getting a nice little crop here, and as an added bonus, this is a branch hanging over from next door, laden, absolutely laden with damsons. These make very nice jam, by the way. They tend to ripen later than most plums, so therefore you can have plums or a plum-like thing late in the season if you have some damsons. So there we go. Okay, so there you have it. That's a little bit about pruning plums. Not too much, but if there's any further questions, please feel free to ask. Plums, I really like plums. They do grow well in the UK climate. They don't predictably do as well as, say, apples, because of the variations of weather. But they're definitely worth having a go at. And golden gages are one of my favourite. If you can find one, just look on a nursery or on the website, and you should be able to find a nice golden gage tree. Okay, any questions? Post them down below, and we will speak soon.